One thing I learned the first time I started associating with or working for very wealthy people, wealthy even by American standards, because relatively speaking, even a poor American is wealthy compared to people from most other countries. But people in $1 million or above range, or even less than that, would still qualify for what I'm talking about. People who don't have very much money or are in the mindset of doing everything possible to save money whenever possible, right? They underestimate the monetary value of convenience for people who have more money than them. Or another way of saying it would be people who have more money than time. And one example where this really stood out to me, especially now that for 5 years, I've lived this, not quite off the grid. We are still on the power grid and the water grid, and we still have access to, supermarkets when we drive into town, and we have the internet, but fairly removed from society, homesteading lifestyle where a lot of things we buy are sourced locally, a lot of things we make or do for ourselves that most people don't do for themselves when they're more in civilization. Like I had to learn how to tune a piano because we bought a piano and there are no piano tuners in the village. I have a basic experience with tuning guitars and stuff, but so I had to learn a new skill set, buy new tools, We have a workshop full of tools, many of which I don't know how to use properly, but some of which I have learned how to use, and now I work with people who know how to use them better than me. So you start thinking differently, like, what can we make out of the tools and materials we have, right? Instead of the default kind of American Amazon Prime mindset is, okay, I need to buy this thing. Let's have it delivered by noon today, right? Like, here's the thing, buy it. Don't care how much it costs. I need it. Here it is, right? Instead, you get more of this mindset of what can we make? What is possible for us to build? What can we learn how to do for ourselves? But if you can offer a convenient solution that doesn't require people to think that way, people who already have a relatively large amount of money or are very busy thinking about other things and they have very little free time in their lives. So one example that really stood out to me was when we started raising rabbits, and there's a butchering process which you can do with basically just a knife or a pair of shears, but it's quite inconvenient to try to do it by yourself without the help of someone else. So if we wanted a very easy way to kill them, as humanely and quickly and cleanly as possible, and a way to hang them as you're processing them to make it a lot easier and faster. And one product I found in my research was something called the hopper popper, which you can look up if you want. It looks like a well-made product, but more importantly, it was a really good idea. It was simply a bent piece of metal attached to a wall in such a way that you can put the rabbit's head in and pull back on their back legs and instantly break its neck and kill it, right? There are other ways to quickly kill a rabbit, but this just simplifies the process so much, and it's more humane, and it just makes the process which might otherwise be quite unsightly, and if you do it wrong, painful for the animal, easier. And also a similarly bent piece of metal that you could hang them from their back legs from, so that they're hanging upside down, and it's easy to gut them, butcher them, prepare them, right? And I said, well, that seems like an awesome idea. Okay, I should buy this product. It was $65. Which is not that much money for an American, and I thought, yeah, okay, I could afford that, and over time, that's the amount of time and inconvenience I save is probably worth $65, right? But at the same time, we have this whole workshop full of tools and materials. That's probably about $3 worth of scrap metal, and what you just have to bend it and do 5 minutes of welding. You're the welder, you tell me, right? So I'm thinking, like, why would I spend $65 on this thing? And especially here we are, where we can import things from America, but it's a lengthy process that takes weeks and has shipping costs, so it's even more inconvenient if I were to try to buy it and ship it here to Armenia. But I thought, obviously anyone with welding or basic building metalworking experience could probably reach the same conclusion I did. Look at this very simple, probably not patented design. I don't know if you could patent something that simple, and just say, oh, I could build that in 10 minutes with scrap metal. Like I should just do that, right? And I don't think the people who manufacture this product are trying to be like manipulative and say, you have to buy our patented product. It's the only way to kill rabbits. I think they just had a good idea. They saw an easy way to manufacture, mass produce it, and offer it to people at a price that many people would consider fair. And if you don't know how to weld and you don't have tools, or you're just very busy, or you don't want to experiment with it and maybe do it slightly wrong, it's probably worth it just to click add to cart, buy for $65, right? A lot of people, because they're still selling the product and have been for years as far as I can tell, so they must be selling some of them, right? And I'm sure many people are happy with the product, right? So that's an example of how, depending on what your mindset is, either you're going to think, okay, how can I do this myself and save money? Or I don't want to think about this, just give me a solution. I don't care what it costs, right? There's a practical limit to that. Like if it costs more than $100, they probably wouldn't sell very many, right? There's this supply and demand equilibrium. You can't charge infinite money, right? But often the amount you can charge is more than you might expect if you're just thinking in the scarcity, I need to save money and do things myself kind of mentality. Right? So very often people who are good at doing things themselves, or even innovating solutions to problems that there aren't any readily available solutions for, don't see how this solution they've come up with might be marketable and worth money to people who just want a convenient way to get something done and don't mind paying a decent price for it. If you can get out of that mentality, that's what I started to see when I had some very wealthy friends like in Santa Monica in California, or a guy I used to work for and do sales for. The first time I met him was at a conference in Monaco, literally the wealthiest place in the world, the highest concentration of millionaires in the micronation Monaco. And so through experiences like that, I never became a particularly wealthy person myself. So I'm not trying to say, look, I do business with rich and famous people at all. I live in a shitty village house. But like being around these kind of people and seeing how they think and how they spend their money and what they don't want to bother thinking about or dealing with, it really changes your understanding of how people think about money and how they spend it, how they make it, and what's worth their time to deal with and what's not, the more and more money you make, right? So when you're at the just barely surviving level, you're just concerned about putting food on the table for your kids, and then there's a level above that and a level above that, and there are several levels above me, right? And so it's just about understanding that basic psychology. And so that goes beyond just the sales process of any given product, but even understanding what might be a good product in and of itself. Is this something that enough people would pay money for and be happy to have because it plays some convenient role in their life, right? You have to project past your own way. You can't just be stuck thinking, well, that's not something I would spend the money on, or I would never spend that much for it, right? Even like my books, I buy a lot of books, but I'll usually buy like cheap secondhand copies that are in used condition, because new they're like $20 or $30, but you can often get a secondhand copy for $5, right? And so even someone who loves to read books, if I'm going to buy hundreds of books over the years, that adds up to a lot of money, and I don't mind if they're in used condition, if it's a quarter of the price, right? But many people might buy my books, paperback copies, new for $20. Most of them are Americans or Western Europeans, or for them, $20 is just disposable income. It's like, yeah, okay, that looks like a good book. It's worth $20. And even I myself, as the writer of these books, do not often pay that much for a book. Right? So you see the irony. It's not, you can't just be limited to what would I spend my money on? What do I think is a good deal? You have to think like, what does the market of buyers in general think is a good deal that they'd be willing to spend the money on? Especially if it's something like a business book. Like if a book is promising to help you save or make more money, and you're in a position where it could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, $20 is not a lot of money. You'll buy 10 books, hoping that at least one of them is worth thousands of dollars to you if it teaches you something useful, right?
Yeah, actually.
So that's kind of that entrepreneurial empathy. You have to get out of your own head and see how other people might view this with different life circumstances than your own. That's it.
That's it. What are you cooking?
This is a recently killed pig from one of the neighbors. We brought it in as a whole pig. There's a video of us processing the whole pig somewhere where we're talking about something else. And now I'm just making some breakfast using my kitchen shears and slicing off thin pieces of meat. And whatever I can't slice off will go to the cats and the dog. Nothing goes to waste. We use every part of the animal, just like the Native Americans.